Welcome back to A Thousand Eyes and One. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Nikki.
You're used to us talking about Game of Thrones, so of course we're going to talk about House of the Dragon. Our most recent episodes, however, have been The Wheel of Time and our book club, Wine on an Empty Stomach. If you want more information, our website that has all of our previous episodes is thousandeyespodcast.com. You can also find us on Twitter as Thousand Eyes One, ONE, not the number, and Facebook and Instagram, A Thousand Eyes and One. We also have an Instagram for our book club, Wine on an Empty Stomach.
Yeah.
So find us there. Also, don't forget to click like and subscribe
To be alerted for new episodes as they come out.
on our YouTube channel, A Thousand Eyes and One podcast, which you're watching, but still. If you're not watching and you're listening, our YouTube channel, A Thousand Eyes and One podcast.
All right. So we're here today because we have been waiting for an opportunity to talk about Fire and Blood. And now that House of the Dragon is coming out, it's a perfect time to kind of give you a little bit of background information on what the show's going to be about.
We didn't want to do a Fire and Blood read-through because
What are you talking about?
read-throughs aren't really our thing.
No.
Not really our thing.
We do love them.
Yeah, I like to listen to other people's read-throughs, but I
Yeah.
don't want to do one myself because I kind of feel like it's done. Everybody's done it, and we don't really have anything new to add to a read-through. So instead, we speculate.
House of the Dragon is about a Targaryen civil war of succession. As you know from Game of Thrones, who gets to sit on the Iron Throne is a huge deal. And House of the Dragon basically is going to be all about answering that question. Does it get to be Daemon Targaryen? Is it going to be Rhaenyra Targaryen? Is it going to be
Aegon the Second?
So many Targaryens. That's a problem that Fire and Blood presents actually with the succession, is that never before had there been so many Targaryen princelings or princesses, let's not leave them out, who would be eligible for the throne.
And also, we're used to Game of Thrones where the war for the crown is from different houses, and also like the North fighting for independence,
Exactly.
the Iron Islands fighting for independence, and it
different
takes
set of
over
politics.
Yeah, it's a difference in politics, and it takes over the entire realm. With House of the Dragon and the Dance of the Dragons, this is just all in family. So now these lords have to choose sides within one family. So it's a completely different type of war. Plus, dragons!
Lots of dragons!
There's so many dragons. I
So
cannot
many dragons.
wait to see the CGI dragons.
Oh my God.
Due to the success of Game of Thrones, I'm sure the budget
Bum,
was
bum,
like
bum,
the
bum,
GDP
bum.
of small countries. So we better get some good dragons, some good wigs.
Good. Oh, better than these.
Better than these. These are season 1 wigs.
Season 1 pilot episode wigs.
Yeah, where there is no budget.
We should start a Patreon. Would you guys give to Patreon for lace fronts?
We should start a GoFundMe. My wig is too hot. Please give me money for human hair.
Because it is a July. The petticoats and the wigs. We are burning up.
Are we extra? Maybe.
Yeah. But it's for Fire and Blood. Because we love you, George.
So we begin with Jaehaerys, the old king, and the good queen, Alysanne. They had 13 children. Not all lived.
Not all of them.
But we're going to focus on the 4 children who are part of what we're talking about today. Those children are Aemon, Balon, Vagon, and Sarah, who I like to call Saucy Sarah. And you'll
Sassy
find out
Sarah.
why in a minute.
So Jaehaerys and Alysanne had all of these children, the 4 that we're going to talk about, and because of this, there was no question of succession. They had their heir and their spare in Aemon and Balon.
Aemon and Balon were well loved by the commons and the lords alike, and they loved each other. There was no bitterness or like sibling rivalry.
No.
They were competitive with each other in their sports pursuits, but nothing bad, nothing
bad.
crazy.
Was,
Everybody was happy.
Yeah, it was much in keeping with kind of like their parents' reign. It was the most peaceful reign that Westeros had seen. Everybody loved that family, everybody was just excited for Aemon to become king.
I mean, even the parts of past the castles at the wall, they renamed one the Queen's Crown. Right?
Yeah.
After Alysanne. You know, people loved them.
She gave them the gift.
She gave them the gift. She changed laws to help women be a little bit better, live a little bit better in Westeros.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make for what comes later, right?
Yes, it is.
For what comes later. She was very hands-on. She was very hands-on in ruling with Jaehaerys. You know, she wasn't just like a trophy queen. She was making laws. She was out visiting the people. She cared very much about what was going on in the realm.
Well, we shouldn't say she was making the laws. She was influencing.
She was influencing
the laws, and Jaehaerys really did take the things she was saying into consideration, and also she cared about women, common and highborn alike. She cared about women and wanted things for women to be better in Westeros.
Yeah.
Aemon would go on to marry Jocelyn Baratheon, and Balon would go on to marry his sister Alyssa.
Unfortunately, all the plans for succession were thrown out the window when poor Aemon was killed in Tarth by a Moorish crossbow that was aimed for the person sitting next to him.
He left behind his daughter Rhaenys, who was married to Corlys Velaryon.
Sea Snake?
The Sea Snake, the Lord of the Tides, who is going to be excellent, I'm sure, in House of the Dragon. I'm very looking forward to the Velaryons, because we didn't see them at all.
No.
There's in Game of Thrones. They cut that family out in Game of Thrones, and they were important. But, you know, whatever. Things happen. You got to pare down. I'm sure they're going to pare down a lot of stuff for House of the Dragon. It'll be interesting to see what. As long as it's good, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
So Rhaenys was married to Corlys Velaryon. She was also expecting a child at the time of her father's death.
Right. Balon was presumed to be the heir, passing right over Rhaenys and her unborn child, who could have been a potential son. He wasn't. And the practice of choosing the male heir over his older sister had been established since Aegon the Conqueror ruled instead of his sister wife Visenya, and Jaehaerys became the king instead of his older sister Rhaena.
That's right. Visenya was 2 years older than Aegon, and even though he conquered the Seven Kingdoms with his sisters, he was named king instead of Visenya, the oldest. And so, because of that, Jaehaerys was named king over his older sister, Rhaena.
Yeah, and that was basically keeping in line with the tradition of Westeros anyway, to pass down the line, the rule from father to son. Or at least do the male heirs. Yes. So it should be noted that Queen Alysanne supported Rhaenys' claim. She felt that her daughter Daenerys should have been heir instead of Aemon because she was older, but because Daenerys died as a child, Aemon became the likely successor. Alysanne helped a great deal in ruling the kingdom, as we said before, and she was quoted as saying,
"A ruler needs a good head and a true heart. A cock is not essential. If your grace truly believes that women lack the wit to rule, plainly you have no further need of me."
Then she pieced out to Dragonstone on her dragon and stayed apart from him for 2 years.
This was known as the Second Quarrel. There was also a first quarrel, but we're not going to talk about that
Get
today.
Fire and Blood. Read up on that.
Yeah, read up on it. Alysanne actually died before the succession was decided. Prince Balon, who was the presumed heir, one day complained about a stitch in his side while he was out on an adventure. Over the next few days, his belly began to swell and the pain worsened, and within days he died of what the maesters called a burst belly. He left behind 2 sons, Viserys and Daemon, who are going to be main characters, of course, in House of the Dragon.
Cannot wait.
Balon did have a 3rd son, but he died in infancy, and we were never given his name. Balon's death would have made Viserys the undisputed heir if Balon had actually sat the Iron Throne, but he did not.
Yep.
So the question of Jaehaerys' heir was brought up again.
Rhaenys didn't have a son as her first child. She had a daughter named Laena, and then she had a son named Laenor. Because the question of succession came back around, Rhaenys put herself forth, and then her daughter Laena. And if their claims were going to be denied due to their sex, Laenor, as Aemon's first male descendant, in her opinion, should have been next in line.
Which did make sense.
Yeah.
you know, he as the son of the first son.
Yep, the first son.
He
of the
is
king.
next in line over the second son's son.
Mm-hmm.
That seems confusing, but it made sense.
It made sense. Yeah.
Jaehaerys's son Vagon, he was not in the line of succession because he went on to become a maester. He was called a bookish man.
Weak and frail and bookish.
Yeah,
and he wasn't well liked.
Yes, he was frail and bookish, and he wasn't well liked. Yeah. Poor Vagon. Well, not really poor Vagon, because he went on to become the Archmaester, and Jaehaerys went to him for counsel. Archmaester Vagon suggested holding a great council with the lords of Westeros
in order to determine succession.
This council had over 1,000 lords, and they brought with them knights, squires, cooks, grooms, servants, camp followers. It was a lot of people, more than Harrenhal could even hold. It was held at Harrenhal.
Yeah.
Tywin Lannister was said to have brought 300 people with him, and Highgarden, ever in competition with the Lannisters, their lord brought 500 people. So as you can imagine, it was essentially now a small city of tens of thousands of people.
14 claims were brought forth. 9 were discarded due to questionable paternity and being baseborn.
I'd like to note that one of the claims of questionable paternity was the son of a woman who claimed that she was raped by Maegor the Cruel, and that he had gotten her with child. And they believed the rape part. He wasn't called Maegor the Cruel for no reason. They just didn't believe that she had a child from him. And if you read Fire and Blood, you'll know about Maegor's difficulty having children. But again, that's a tale for another time.
Yep. So Sarah's sons were among the baseborn claimants whose claims were discarded. She didn't put herself forth as an heir because even though she would have had the right, because she had a kingdom of her own across the narrow sea.
So Sarah, as we called Saucy Sarah, actually ran away from Westeros to get away from her father's watchful eye. She was known as a very promiscuous girl and just decided to have a hot girl summer, and she bounced to Essos, where she became a courtesan, but not just any courtesan. She ruled in all but name.
Yep.
And she became very wealthy, very influential, very powerful, and one of her sons was actually the son of one of the Triarchs.
Yep.
Look that up if you don't know what that is. I kind of feel like the show might cut Sarah out because so much of it is side story.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a lot to get into, so I have a hunch that Sarah won't be in the show.
So Vagon was ruled out because of his vows, and Rhaenys and Laena were again put aside because they were women. This left Viserys versus Laenor. If they had chosen by right of primogeniture, Laenor would have been heir. But if they had chosen by right of proximity, it would have been Viserys.
So several things were considered that made Viserys likely to be the next heir. Viserys rode Balerion the Black Dread, even though after Balerian's death he never again rode a dragon. Laenor was not yet a dragon rider. Viserys' claim derived from his father, and Laenor's claim derived from his mother, and because of precedence, Viserys' claim was stronger than Laenor's, which again derived from his mother, the queen who never was. Lastly, Viserys was a married man, and he was 24 years old, and Laenor was a 7-year-old child. Having a child king would have led to a lengthy regency and would present even more problems.
You never know if the regent has their own agenda, as we could see with Cersei and Tommen.
Right. In the books, Tommen is much younger, and Cersei is his regent, and so Cersei is ruling the kingdom, essentially. At the time that Tommen ascends to the throne. The show aged him up, but even in the show, you see how much influence Cersei had, so imagine it back with a whole bunch of Targaryens. It would have been a problem.
Yeah, totally. So Corlys Velaryon made great efforts to help Rhaenys become the heir, throwing around his wealth and impressive family history, but despite those efforts, Viserys was chosen. This established that the throne was to be passed down through the male descendants only, regardless of seniority. Rhaenys went on to become known as the Queen Who Never Was.
which is kind of a messed up nickname. I wonder if people called her that to her face.
I doubt that. I doubt that. She still had a dragon.
So the old king, Jaehaerys, died, and Viserys was named king next. He married Emma of House Arryn.
You should call her Emma the Young.
Emma the Young. And they had a young daughter named Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra ended up being their only child. Emma suffered multiple pregnancy losses, and she had one son who died in infancy. Emma would go on to have a second son, who she named Balon, but she died after birthing him, and unfortunately Balon died the very next day. Daemon
Troublesome.
Troublesome Daemon.
Troublesome, trifling as David.
Trifling as Daemon would jokingly refer to him as the heir for a day. Way to mock your sister-in-law's death.
Yeah.
So this left Rhaenyra as the only possible heir until Viserys married Alicent Hightower and had 4 children with her: Aegon II, Helena, Aemond, and Daeron.
Mm-hmm.
Alicent Hightower was the daughter of his hand, Otto Hightower.
Mm-hmm. He was also the hand while King Jaehaerys was still alive. Alicent came over with his dad and when he brought all the children to court, and she used to read to the old king while he was on his deathbed. And
a lot of the lords thought that Otto Hightower had ulterior motives in bringing his daughter to court. They believed that he was setting her up to marry into the royal family and that it was a bit above his station.
Mm-hmm.
Before Alicent had her children and before Alicent married Viserys, Otto Hightower actually supported Rhaenyra as heir.
Yeah, that's right. He was in her corner. So based on the trailers, we think that this is where House of the Dragon starts. Since we don't know what will happen in the show, we'll leave off and return for an episode full of speculations for what this means for the future of Westeros, and House of the Dragon episode by episode breakdown and analysis.
Just like we used to do for Game of Thrones. And the good thing is, when we do our next video speculating on the future of Westeros, we'll have what happened in the books, Fire and Blood, versus what happens in the show. And we can talk about what effects that has on the future possible queens of Westeros.
Yeah.
So look out for that. Follow us on social media, Twitter, athousandeyesandone, Facebook and Instagram, athousandeyesandone. And if you're interested in our speculative fiction book club, it's Wine on an Empty Stomach on Instagram. Our next read will be The Gilded Ones.
Woohoo. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to be notified of when new episodes drop.
If you're listening instead of watching, you can find our YouTube channel, 1,000 Eyes and One Podcast. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.